Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi Masechet Maasrot. We're up to Perek Gimel Mishnah Zayin. Today's Mishnayot should be Nishmat Neria ben Svetlana Aranbai and Eliyahu ben Burcha Israelov Menuchatam beGan Eden. Amen. Today's Mishnah is going to discuss which structures are considered like a house in regards to setting the Maaser obligation. The Mishnah says Hatzirifin, a hunter's hut, Babulganin, and field sheds, Vaitalkiot, and summer huts, Piturin, they are exempt. They are not subject to the Maaser obligation for produce that is brought into them, because the Mefarshim explain, quoting the Rambam, these structures are not like regular houses, even if someone lives in them, because they are not made to be lived in permanently. And the Mefarshim explain what these structures were. We're going to go through them, B'ezrat Hashem, one by one. If you could look at the illustrations in the Mishnayot, it'll make it easier. Hatzirifin, we said, were hunters' huts. A hunter's hut did not have a regular roof. Rather, their roofs were extensions of their walls. They were made of willow branches or reeds, which were tied together on top and then spread out towards the ground like a cone. They were used by hunters as temporary shelters. Then we have Bulganin, field sheds, which were field huts that were used to store produce in the fields. And then we have Vaitalkiot, summer huts. Summer huts it was like a type of sukkah, basically used to provide a shaded area for the farmers to sit on hot summer days. The Mishnah continues, Sukkat Ginosar, a Ginosar hut, which Mefarshim explain, a hut that farmers of the Ginosar region stay in during the season, and the Mefarshim translate Ginosar. They give us a little background. Ginosar was a very fertile area along Lake Kinneret, where very superior fruits grew in large quantities. So farmers would stay there in huts throughout the growing and harvesting seasons. Now, presumably, the Mefarshim tell us the farmers didn't live in that area. They came during the season to take care of their gardens and orchards and stayed in these huts while they were there. Therefore, the Mishnah says, Sukkat Ginosar, a Ginosar hut, Afal pi sheyesh ba rechaim betarnegulim pitura. Even if it has a mill and chickens in it, it is still not subject to the Maaser obligation if produce is brought inside of it, because it's not a permanent dwelling. And the Tiferet Yisrael adds, what's the Mishnah emphasizing about a mill and chickens? Although the mill and chickens show that the farmer is using this place as a residence during the season, it's still not considered a real residence enough to be subject to the Maaser obligation. The Mishnah continues, Sukkat HaYotzrim, the rule for a potter's hut. The Mefarshim explain a potter's hut is a two-room hut in which a potter would live, work, and sell his products. And a potter, we know, is someone who makes pottery or earthenware utensils. So the Mishnah says, Sukkat HaYotzrim, a potter's hut, HaPinimit chayevet v'chitzona pitura, the inner room, which serves as his residence, is subject because it's his home, but the outer room, which serves as his workshop where he sells his products, that is not subject to the obligation because it is not his residence. Now, although we learned in chapter 2, Mishnah 2, a store does set the Maaser obligation, this front room does not set the obligation because it's used mainly for making the pottery and not selling it. Therefore, produce brought into the outer room may still be eaten as a snack, but produce brought into the inner room may not be eaten at all before separating Maasrot. Rabbi Yossi says, Kol she'ena dirat hachama v'dirat hageshamim pitura. Any structure that is not fit to be used as both a summer home and a winter home, it's not subject to the Maasrot obligation, and a potter's inner room is not fit to be used as a home in the winter. Therefore, even produce brought into the inner room can be eaten as a snack according to Rabbi Yossi, and the Rav tells us, Ven halacha ki Rabbi Yossi, the halacha does not follow Rabbi Yossi. And to explain the first opinion, according to the Tana Kama, as long as it serves as a regular home during the time of year in which it's used, it sets the Maaser obligation. Therefore, this potter's hut would be chayav. The Ginosar hut, however, on the other hand, they were not used as a full residence even during the season in which they were used. That's why nobody requires it there. The only dispute is by the potter's hut. The Tana Kama says as long as it serves as a regular home when you're there, it will be obligated the inner room. According to Rabbi Yossi, it has to be able to be fit both for the summer home and winter home. Therefore, the inner room is exempt. The Mishnah continues, Sukkat achag bechag, a sukkah used for the holiday of Sukkot during the holiday is subject to a machloket. Rabbi Yehuda mechayev v'chachamim potrin. Rabbi Yehuda considers it subject to the obligation of Maaser, whereas the Chachamim consider it not subject, exempt. And the Mefarshim explain, Rabbi Yehuda holds that a sukkah must be fit to be a permanent dwelling based off the Gemara in Masechet Sukkah, page 7b. He even requires, Mefarshim explain, he even requires the Sukkah to have a mezuzah for this reason, because like we said, he holds the Sukkah has to be fit for a permanent dwelling. Therefore, he considers it a residence with regards to Maaser as well, at least during Sukkot itself, whereas the Chachamim, on the other hand, they view a Sukkah as a temporary dwelling, and therefore they do not consider it to be a residence in regards to Maaser, even during the holiday of Sukkot. And like the Rab tells us, Ben Rabbi Yehuda, the Halacha does not follow Rabbi Yehuda, the Halacha follows the sages. And that is the end, Rabotai, of Mishnah Zayin. Mishnah Chet now considers the law of produce that grows inside a courtyard. Te'enashi yomedet bechatzer. If a fig tree stands inside a courtyard, the owner may pick and eat one fig at a time, and he's not obligated to separate myself from it. But if he combined two or more figs, he's obligated to separate maaser before eating them, because two figs together are considered processed, and the courtyard would set their maaser obligation, like we learned in chapter 2, Mishnah 5. The Chachamim decreed that two or more fruits picked together should be treated as a small pile, which would make them processed enough for their maaser obligation to be set by one of the things that sets the maaser obligation. Since the figs in our Mishnah grew in the owner's courtyard, the courtyard sets the obligation as soon as two of them are picked together. That would prohibit snacking on them. A single fig, however, is not treated as a pile and therefore cannot be set for maaser. Therefore, it remains permitted for snacking even though it's in the courtyard. And the Mefarshim add, if the owner of the tree plans to pick all its fruits now, so even two figs together would not become set for maaser, the owner's intention would prevent the processing from being considered complete until the entire tree was picked. But our Mishnah is speaking of a case where at this time the owner was only planning to pick the few figs he wanted to eat, and therefore it would be considered a completion of the act. The Mishnah continues, Rabbi Shimon Omer, Rabbi Shimon says, Achad b'mino ve'achad b'smolo ve'achad b'piv. Even if he takes one fig in his right hand, another in his left hand, and a third one in his mouth, he is not obligated to separate Maasrot from them because they are not considered combined in this way. Whereas according to the first time that we quoted, as long as he picked a second fig before eating the first one, they are considered combined. And the Rav tells us, Rabbi Shimon, the Halacha does not follow Rabbi Shimon. The Mishnah concludes, Allah l'roshah, if he climbed to the top of the tree, he may fill his lap with figs and eat them there, because the top of the tree is not considered to be within the courtyard. Therefore, the figs may be eaten there as a snack, even if they have been combined. The Mefarshim explain, these figs are like figs that grew outside the courtyard, which can be eaten as a snack, even though many of them were picked at the same time, since nothing set their maaser obligation. That is in Rabotai, today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen v'amen.